But hey, it's 1 o'clock. It's Autoflow time, guys. Let's go. Hey, with me today, we have a very special guest, one of our dear friends, Darren McLea with DJM Solutions. Darren, this is a new enterprise for you, yes?
Yes, yes, it is. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to talk about some digital inspections today.
Good. Now, one of the things I mentioned is Darren, and when you were still operating your shops at McLea's Tire and Service, right?
Yeah,
McLea's
Tire and Automotive. Yep.
Tire and Automotive. There we go. One of the first multi-shop tire stores that I worked with when I started with Autoflow, which is nearly 6 years ago that I started with Autoflow now.
Oh, I didn't realize we were one of the first ones.
One of the first ones that I worked with
Ultimate
Autoflow.
Tires.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So it's
Cool.
not like I didn't know what I was doing. I was just
Sure. Oh, I can tell you knew what you were doing. Yeah, you were great. I could tell right away.
But no, this was so 5 top multi-store tire group, high volume of tickets, very busy environment. And as the topic of this is very clear, this is the winning digital inspection strategy for fast-paced shops. This is a topic that I feel like, wow, we really crafted this stuff in those years when you were just onboarding. I feel like the conversations that we were able to have with your Uncle Rick too, a lot of reports and analysis, a lot of challenges and barriers to overcome, things that everyone will hopefully benefit from hearing about today. So, hey, they were very successful. And Darren, I believe it was about a year, 2 years ago now, you sold to AAA?
Yeah, just over 3 years. It was 3 years in November. Time flies, man.
Yeah, it really does.
It really does. Too
Very
quick.
good. Yeah. Well, there was another title for this webinar, but my marketing team suggested otherwise. I was going to call it, "You're Not Too Busy. Digital Inspections for Fast-Paced Auto Service." Same thing.
Yeah.
You're not too busy, right? If Darren's shops can do it and we can onboard it in a fast-paced environment, there's processes and procedures that we absolutely can do. So this isn't really about just judging the too busy excuse or anything like that, but we do understand. And I think it's worth acknowledging that busy environments are tough. And we asked that question for all of you beforehand. How often do you feel too busy to do digital inspections? And only 41% said never. And that's good. We have a wide audience that does. Some of the stores are not super high volume, 1,000 car count type of shops where we see everywhere from 100 to 400, 500 a month. But some of our clients go well beyond that. And so the mixed results, not surprising. Frequent, always, occasionally, there's challenges regarding how much we can get done in our day. Probably not surprising statistics, right, Darren?
No. And I think sometimes it's natural for us to, that always. I don't know about you, but especially this time of year, I always feel too busy for all kinds of stuff, but somehow I still get a lot done. So that's the reality of it. But I do like the nevers, never too busy to do a digital inspection. That's good to see too.
I sense some bravado in that too. It's like, we're never too busy. Is that the answer behind this? I wondered on this. Well, what I did here too, you see, it says good right over the frequently, always, and occasionally. And our leadership team at Autoflow, we just recently reread Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willings and Leif Babin. A fantastic book for any team. I highly recommend it. Any of you who have heard Jocko Willings probably has heard good. And that's his response to challenges and hardship. And I just wanted to invoke that same spirit into this conversation. Like, oh, yeah, you have a busy process. It's hard to do good inspections and all those. Good. We're going to discuss that stuff. I love this conversation. And we went further than the poll. I don't normally do this because it can open Pandora's box, but we asked for responses in a short form as well for the type of constraints that you're seeing. What keeps you, we asked, from doing 100% inspections in your shop? And we saw all kinds of really fascinating answers. Some of them totally expected. Time. Number one response. So many of you indicated that it's just a time matter. There's a lot to dive into in that, but volume of cars, the high car count, obviously, too many cars scheduled is an exact phrase used. And this one was interesting, trying to rush cars out to meet customer expectations. Sticky spot. Been there, Darren?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And actually, as we went through this and I looked, I'm like, yep, I've heard that. I've said that. I've said that. So yes, I recognize I think everyone in here, I don't think
Yeah.
anything caught me off guard or was new to me. I've seen all of this.
Well, what's funny for me on this one, transmission shop specialty. A lot of people know this about me. My background is entirely in transmission. It's a long cycle repair. Every single one of those excuses, maybe not high car count specifically, but time and the volume of the cars, it's all proportional to what you're doing.
Yeah, it's all
And,
relative. Yep.
yep, all
hmm
relative.
Yep.
Absolutely. Same problems everywhere is what it feels like. Then technician related challenges, right? The technician capabilities being cited. I think that's a great point. If you're asking them to do something they're not skilled to do, that can create a lot of challenges.
Yep.
This one, I sort of put a euphemism in here for poor decisions. I think the actual reply was stupid decisions.
I did. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
To just get it in, and it breaks the process. And sometimes this happens where on the spot, the staff members are making a unilateral decision to do something that went against what we are trying to accomplish. And we aren't going to judge that harshly here. We're going to talk about these things. But employee pushback related to that, you've met several in your career, Darren.
Yeah. And usually that employee pushback is because of one of these several things that we're seeing right there. Something
Absolutely.
that's causing that.
Yep. Hey, tech says it slows them down. Common complaint with a technician. All right, good.
Yeah.
So process and understanding issues, this got even further into it. I felt like this was cool. Lack of standardized processes. All right. Now we're taking some ownership. The owners who are replying to this, I feel like this is where we got some really rich responses on things. And that's good that you're saying this. Lack of understanding the importance, the why behind why we're doing these inspections the way we are, further process and procedures, and struggling to understand the true goal and purpose of a DVI. Ooh. Ooh.
There's one. Is there another slide of more of these?
There is.
At the end of them? Okay.
Yeah, one more.
There was one that I was going to add that I don't think I saw, but I'll bring up. I'll just add it to the list live.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it?
Yeah. No, just tell me. Yeah.
So one that I didn't see, but we would run into, and you should investigate this in your own company, is the technology, the resources, where that one guy's bay, it's too far. He doesn't have Wi-Fi out there, so he can't do it. If you have that, you got, okay, good. Now we know that we have that. We have to address it and fix it. Wi-Fi not reaching, tablets not responding, that type of stuff. You've got to fix if your scan tool went down, would you just keep rolling?
No.
And not scan the cars? No, you get it fixed. You got to address those issues. So sometimes the pushback comes from that. We just
I've heard this there. I'm really glad you brought that up because, I have heard from shops and coaches. Well, so-and-so said, it's just not, it's the images take too long to upload. It's like, why didn't they reach out? Oh, it's like, did they just accept that that's the way the software must work and that hundreds of thousands of DVIs are occurring every single month all around the country? But this particular shop has must have an issue that I guess doesn't bother this other people. No, you've got something uniquely interesting going on that can probably be solved. Treat it like something you can solve. And I know from a technology standpoint, we want to solve that if that were the case.
I think for us, real quick, I remember there was a Wi-Fi reaching issue that I had at one of the stores. And they weren't telling me, but then when I actually went down to the store and investigated, and someone said that's going to be really expensive to make the Wi-Fi reach out there. So I reached out, I got help. You know what it cost? About the price of 2 brake jobs. So I'm missing all these brake jobs, these inspections. So just put the infrastructure in so it works, and bam, we get more brake jobs and fluid exchanges, and we're back up and rolling.
Yeah, shop infrastructure is probably a whole webinar on that stuff, folks, but it is outdated out there in some of those establishments. I found a lot of this really fascinating, though, because it goes a little deeper here. The returning PMI, when vehicles come in for a inspection and they've already been in for an inspection in the past, that's an interesting topic. So that needs to be dealt with. And this is going to come up in our conversation today. Consistency over a large group of technicians. I think just the word consistency period is wonderful there. We get more why, and my favorite response, I think, was depends on the day. This open admission of like, it's different all the time. And one of the ones here, tires outside of the bay, tire shops uniquely run into this scenario. Recent scenario for me and my family. My son was driving home on the highway, and sure enough, he got to pull the right inside of the sidewall, puncture. On a newer tire. It's absolutely crazy. Don't know what he could have hit or anything, but it was a sudden issue. And of course, we were that guy, had brought them the loose tire.
Yeah.
to get that taken care of. And that's not normally something that I would do, but that's what we did. And we're not going to get a DVI on that thing.
Yeah. You might be able to inspect the lug nut holes and make sure they're not rounded out or anything. But that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. So this is where we're at. Though we heard a lot of excuses. What are the consequences of these excuses? I think many of us already know them. Poor inspection quality is an ongoing issue. Sometimes we fail to make good recommendations to our clients, and this is always going to result in poor presentation. Our sales presentations suffer when we don't have good inspection results, or maybe we had good inspection results and our service advisor, as we'll discuss, is actually too busy to even bother delivering the presentation in a good way. Either way, I always like to go back to this quote from one of the books that was recommended to me, Miller's Bolt, fantastic book, Modern Business Parable. Thomas Steer is the author of this book. There's a quote in there one of the characters uses, and he says, when you realize that you're operating outside the person you've defined yourself to be, it's a golden opportunity for self-discovery. Now, folks, I put that on the screen and I wanted to read it out loud for a very clear reason. I know not all of you are able to look at the screen and hear it, but I want you to take it away from the personal element and think of the shop. So if your shop is operating outside of what you've defined it to be, hey, this is a great opportunity to reassess things. And that's where we're going to dive into. So Darren, you've heard me talk on this too. We start with why, and I know I've mentioned my good friend and coach, Bob Greenwood. It's actually almost a tradition that I mention him in every webinar that I do, period. So a lot of our attendees are used to this, but hey, this was the challenge he gave me. And years ago, when I was against inspections or thought it was a waste of my time, he shattered this with this question of what our job is. And our job, he said, our professional responsibility is to make sure the vehicle's safe, reliable, and efficient. How can you do that unless you're inspecting every car that comes in your bay? And this is a key point. If our technicians can assimilate to this, I feel like a lot of that pushback and the barriers that we have go away, and we start to understand the true importance of what it is that we're actually trying to get done. Now, ownership of a business, you're looking at other things. You're looking at the return on investment. And we see all sorts of shops try to initiate what we call the 300% rule. And we've talked about this a number of times too, Darren. 100% of the cars get inspected. 100% of the items found get estimated, and 100% of those things get presented to the customer. 300% rule. What a great goal. Is it ever truly achieved fully? And most people, like some people, come very close and achieve this to a degree of accuracy. But improved return on investment through just looking at average repair orders, even on DVIs, on regular visits, I always compared it to the viewership versus regular tickets. If you had a viewed inspection versus a regular visit. And so just even moderate amount of views, as we'll see on a couple of assessments, you get a substantial return on investment. But here's what startles me. These are 3 sets of examples from an Autoflow sales report that I put into a spreadsheet. Random shops, but real shops, folks. Look at the ARO differences first. I'll highlight them here. You see the ARO difference here is 28, 16, 31, 75%. Like, that's a huge difference in the average repair orders that are viewed. But now I want to draw your attention to something else, the view ratio. How many of the tickets actually were viewed in that shop? Between 60% to 48 and 41. That's a pretty low. And I see this all over the board. Now, those aren't really high volume shops either, right, Darren? So this is a more high volume operation.
We were that way. Remember, we had talked about this.
Yeah.
And I thank you for pushing us, because remember, originally I didn't want it to send them a text automatically when we would check, when we be making their work order. And you said, wow,
well, texts are scary, Darren.
Yeah. And then finally, our view rate was low, and getting the people to actually engage and view everything. And finally, you told us, if you let us send a text right when you check their car in, they'll look at it and it will start to train them that this is how you're going to communicate with them. And what happened when we did it? Our view rates, I don't want to say they went through the roof, but they definitely increased. And then
you don't want the first text to be a link from an unfamiliar number, right?
Yeah. And I didn't understand that. And so thank you to you for making me realize that. And it worked, because then they were ready for it. And then it set up the advisor. So the customer was now expecting that inspection. So then there's a little bit more pressure on the advisor. Like, I can't skip out of this now. Like she or he knows that something's coming. If I don't deliver, it's like I made a commitment and I didn't follow up on it. So it kind of, I don't want to say you're cornering your staff into having to do it, but to a point, we have to do that sometimes.
What you're recognizing is the client is a participant in this process.
Yes.
And they don't know your process. They're the outside of it. The expectations are so clear. We talk a lot about expectation setting. And I think this is why it's interesting to me, because you see on my screen, this is a higher volume shop. This is a real example. I've kept it anonymized. Only 322 of their visits had viewed inspection. Now, this is a tire store and tire season. I'm going to clarify that. And this is not their best performing month, but we definitely have a substantial difference in tickets that had views versus not views. It's still closer to the 30% range. And that's a pretty substantial impact on views. But wow, all right. So when it gets real busy, why is the view rate dipping a little bit? They have better view rate in other months. And I don't know, folks, this is why we're having this conversation. You see, it's still good, but it could be better. There's so much that we could do better in this stuff. And I think more refinement on our process is exactly where we need to discuss things.
And that I'll just add, that report is great. And if that type of information isn't being shared with your service writing staff and everybody in the shop, sometimes when you're trying to help them see the why, that right there, it's like, I should know this. Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. You know, if they view it, they will buy, or if they view it, they will engage. Like you can see right there, those who don't view, they spend about this. Those who do, there's a lot more that comes from it. It's right there in the report.
So yeah, and one of the questions I received is, are we going to be talking about the tools and how to use? We're going to be talking about strategy today, primarily, first and foremost. There is some why, and I like to start with that, but we're going to talk some of these standards. And this is where we're going to move to next, is different standards for different visits. Now, this is strategic, folks. Now, what I want to see inside of Autoflow or in any other program that you're using, what you want to have is some sort of system and process in place for different scenarios, different visits in a tire store. I just showed you some numbers on the impacts of that we can have. Why were the views so low? It's because there are different types of visits that a view on the DVI, we know in a high volume operation that you simply don't have that much to discuss, probably a lot of those loose tire scenarios. But what about the process in general? So Darren, one of the things I remember we discussed, this is where you guys thrived. And this is where I started to see it, a big change with your operation, is when you started to define for your team the certain types of inspections that you do in certain types of scenarios. And I feel like this is something where a lot of shops do drop the ball and they try to do this one size fits all for all sorts of scenarios. And then you run into a frustrated team member.
Yeah, it's really, you know, you have to ask yourself, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want this to work? How bad do you want to take care of your customers? And you really have to look at the reality of what works for your business, your mix of business, your mix of service, whatever you have, and your shops. What's realistic and what can be attained. And that's where we came up with this here, where there's different types of services that require a specific inspection based on what it is. If it's a waiter, I mean, if it's a waiter flat repair, you may have this on the next slide coming up here, but
our next slide is your sheet.
Look at that old relic.
This is your actual relic. Yep.
That's a scanned version of a fax of a scan of a fax right there, everybody. But I happen to still have that. And I know at a couple of our stores, these are still up right next to the work order board where the work orders go out and get hung. That is right there for everybody to see. So it's very cut and dry, black and white. And this would be adapted over time as we make changes. But okay, is it a waiter or not a waiter? Are they leaving it till 5? We had that. And then what type of service is it? That dictates, I can look right here as a technician or a GST. I can look, okay, it's a tire rotation. I'm doing a complete 26-point inspection. What else do we have in here? Oh, flat repair on the floor on a jack. They're waiting. Okay, we're not going to do a full digital inspection because we're kind of trying to sell the turnaround time on this flat repair, but there's still certain standards that we want to make sure we still withhold to make sure the car is going out of there and we can stand behind and say, yes, we did look at this, and this looked good. We'll catch the rest of it on your next oil change or whatever it is.
Yeah, and you're giving them a sample of what it is that you're offering in those environments too. It's not that you're doing nothing in these situations and foregoing it. In fact, these are, the reason I love this document when you shared this with me is that you described all of the scenarios very quickly that I see as excuses for why something doesn't get done. And you actually have inside of that, on that bottom part of this form, clear direction for what to do if there's an exception to this and an inspection can't even be done. And there's someone that actually is signing off on this. You have it structured within your team that there's a sequence of steps that you go through to indicate that an inspection didn't occur. It's so important that this be done that if it cannot be done, there's a process for that too.
Yep.
Documented.
Yes. We had a predefined note that the service advisor could quickly hit in there that let the customer know that there's a few steps to this. Lets the customer know, document on the invoice that the inspection was not provided due to time constraints or whatever we had in there for the situation. But also I could go back and look, or my Uncle Ricky could go back and look and see, okay, yes, a manager did sign off. So there was something here. There was some type of event or some type of exception that allowed this to go through, and the manager signed off on it. Okay, so we know this one was okay. And I love that you have no exceptions with an asterisk on there, because we brought that up.
Asterisk is important.
Yes, there's no exceptions unless this or that happens. So, but
which is communicated. And that's
yes,
the core element of this stuff. The uncommunicated process exceptions are where we get into a world of hurt. We talk about this a lot. There's technicians who will pencil whip an inspection just to get it done and off their back. Horrible scenarios come from that.
Worst thing you can do. Tell someone that something is good when you didn't inspect it. And guess what? A week later, you find out it's bad. No good.
Yeah. No, terrible scenarios. Now, looking into the next things here, we have this concept, and I brought in the Jocko Willings and the ownership stuff. I think this is important to talk about this periodically, because you described a scenario for me, Darren, where one of your employees was just kind of blindly going through the process because he had a direction. What was he doing?
And it actually, that sheet there is a little bit old, because when I saw this situation, we adapted it. So I recognized that there was a problem. We adapted and changed it, and we had a process going forward. He was just doing what he was told. He was doing a waiter flat repair, and our previous standard was on a waiter flat repair. I can't remember what we did. It was probably a little bit too much, especially for a waiter flat repair situation, which comes up out of nowhere for a customer. If they're coming to you, they may be a regular customer, and they may be a month away from their regular inspection with an oil change anyway. But I knew that this customer was in a hurry. I wrote it up. It went out there. She was in a hurry. She had to go pick up her kids from school or a soccer practice, whatever it was. This came out of nowhere. And so the technician is doing what he's supposed to do. I look over and I'm wanting to know, are we close to getting that flat repair done? And I look and he's popping the hood and he's hooking up the battery tester. And I'm just like, we are testing the battery on this vehicle that we need to fix the tire and get her back on the road.
Good for him. And man, pressure.
Good for him for following what he was supposed to do. But then I may have had a little, not resentment towards him, but I was fired up. And then I thought, you know what? He's out here in the shop. He doesn't know that she's in a big hurry. He's doing the standard that I set. But now that I'm here in the store and I see the reality of what I'm setting up for my crew to do, this is not ideal. So we adapted and we changed it going forward. So then flat repairs was get it in, get the flat done. Look at that brake pad right there. A quick check of the pressures, the brake lights, the blinkers, and you get them back on the road ASAP to get them back on with their life. Let them know that that's all we inspected, and we'll do your full inspection when you come back for your oil change in 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I feel like the issue is with that. A lot of people feel like they're going to get jumped on. Oh, are you saying you shouldn't inspect that car thoroughly and everything else? Like, no, that is not what we're saying. But that's also not why they're in. And those two things have to be reconciled some way. So there's a process for this. You can go through that upsell process later on. Don't start thinking you're going to go do a full-fledged inspection on it. You're going to absolutely infuriate that individual when you get into the conversation. Oh, here's all the other things you found. They're just in for a flat repair and they're in a hurry. They're not going to be listening to you. And I think that's representative on the views being lower in a lot of cases for higher volume shops. The service advisors might receive some inspection results, but there really isn't anything they can do with them given the amount of time and the expectations that were set for that particular visit. And you have to recognize that. You have to recognize it. Now, this is where I feel the struggle. A lot of technicians, they're told to do something. They're just going to do it, and they're going to be doing it frustrated. There's a great part, and I'll mention this in Extreme Ownership again, and they were talking about the Battle Ramadi. A commander had issued some strategic plan that the guys knew wouldn't work. And so they had to take the effort then to own that scenario that, well, we need to invite him to come and see what we're doing and why this isn't going to work. And you actually have to communicate up the chain sometimes on why this is. And if your team isn't actually doing this with you on your process on the ground and you're not listening to it, well, that's a problem. And here's the other side of the problem. Technicians are horrible at communicating up the chain effectively. It sounds like in most cases, frustration, complaints, condemnation, and just anger. And that isn't going to really move the needle in any sort of way. I think it's really important that you have regular meetings with your team, that you're discussing where those challenges are as you're doing this part of the process. Got a question. What if a customer drops off their vehicle for a flat repair? In your opinion, should we be pulling air filters and testing batteries? Darren?
I think, we would always let the customer know when they would drop that off, especially if they're dropping off at 8 a.m, they're leaving until 5, whatever it is. We let them know that we do a full complimentary vehicle inspection. So they're aware that that is going to happen. Now, if it's a drop off for a flat repair and we've got time, yes, we would want to pull it in on the lift. If we had the bay available, do the full inspection, and just let them know. I know this is outside your regular service routine, but we're just going to do it just to, if something has happened between now and the last time you're in, we'll catch it for you today and let you know. And if not, we'll just let you know everything's okay. That worked for my shop. But the point of this here is everybody in this webinar watching today, you have to look at the realities of your shop and what works for your business. So even though it is a flat repair, yes, I recommend, it's a great courtesy to offer at the same time that you're doing that flat repair when they drop it off. Now, when they're waiting and they just need to get to work and they don't want to be late, we don't want to pop that hood and do all this stuff.
Unless that advisor has had that conversation as well, correct?
Sure. Oh yeah, no, that's a good point. If the customer said, yeah, you know what? And they say, I'm on the clock, I'll milk this thing. Yeah, I can hang out for an hour. Cool. We'll do a full inspection for you while you're here. Perfect. And then you could do it. But again, that's an exception to what my rule would be, but you can definitely go with that.
No, and this is one of those elements. Like my son had a project for school recently that he was having a hard time getting finished. He doesn't have time to do it. What do you mean you don't have time to do it? Other kids in the class have time to do it? He said, well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe, but I gotta get Judy home, my daughter who rides with him. It's like, you could have communicated to me that you have a project that you needed to do. And do you think we wouldn't resolve Judy's transportation? Of course we would, but you can't assume that that's not something that we're interested in addressing. And you can't do that with waiting clients either. Your service advisors can try to set that expectation. So Simon, I love that question because this is the crux of it. And I feel like the what if the customer drops it off and has this scenario, the what if is resolved in that conversation with the individual at that moment. Let them know, here, these are the two options. We can focus this and we like to make sure your vehicle's safe, reliable, and efficient across the board. That's what our responsibility is here. If you're in a hurry and we can't do our full inspection, we're going to just be able to look at the things there and we can get you going quickly. But we'll want to see you back. And all of those sort of conversations, having the wherewithal to do it and having a structure to do it, that's where this stuff really starts to get solved. Now,
and I would add, share the feedback that comes from those situations amongst the team and continue to kind of build some of that internal verbal communication of sharing the data and the experience back and forth, and allow that to continue to adapt and evolve your processes. So no process, I feel, ever really stays static the same. It's always evolving. If you're growing your business, you have to be changing all the time. So keep that conversation going.
I don't know if I've ever done the same thing for too long. It's always evolving. And that's where this comes in, right? When we start benchmarking where we're at, this is where we make those tweaks and improvements. So you have, let's say, one of those technician scenarios where we have inconsistent inspections. Well, especially in a multi-store environment, Darren, you guys were very good at this. You not only did this technician to technician, you also did this store to store and even month over month in different seasons. And there's reasons why something's relaxed. Gosh, guys, it was Canadian tire season right now. And I don't know if any one of you have witnessed Canadian tire season, but they are required by law to start, I forget the date, in November, I believe, where you have to get your winter set on. It's required. And it is chaos in that environment. And I love watching the charts on our Canadian clients during this time, because you can see the ones that the process is really solid and the ones that are still finding their process. There's gaps that start to occur on the amount of inspections they get performed. And then there's some of them that they're still batting around 90% of the vehicles that come in get inspected, even though they've more than tripled the ticket volume that came in their shop. It's impressive. It's possible, but you understand when those things are coming through an analysis. Obviously, Canadians are not surprised by tire season.
Yeah. I have some friends up in North Dakota, same thing. I said, how's everything going? He goes, well, the snow fell, so it's triple the car volume right now. Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Absolutely. And what we're looking for, though, is trends inside of all those benchmarks. And the reporting in Autoflow is key for this. That if you aren't looking at this stuff on a regular basis, you're going to find that some guys are doing great, other guys are struggling. And if there's guys that are doing great, you have to dive into why they're doing great. If there's guys that are struggling, you have to understand why they're struggling too. It's really simple concept, but it has to be done at an ownership level. And if there's excuses coming from one individual that simply can't get pictures in or isn't completing the inspections, well, start looking at what this individual's doing good. Maybe they need to shadow things, or maybe that individual, as we'll talk about later, might not even be someone that we want on inspections. Maybe he's a production rock star and he just doesn't do them.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that, it was easy. Well, it wasn't easy. I don't know if it was easy, but because I had multiple stores, I could compare stores to stores. So a lot of the, hey, we had so many extra cars. We were so busy. Well, this other store also had the same percentage increase of cars, but still kept their inspections up. So then I look at them. How are they able to do it? And why is this store not able to do it? And then let's bring those managers together and let's talk about what are you doing? What are they doing that you're not doing? And let's compare notes. And let's ultimately, as a team, let's help each other. And then if there are some roadblocks, let's identify them and try to work to remove them, or we need to at least acknowledge that that's there and that we're working towards passing that, because we have to be on a team to try to make this better. And again, I hear my dad in my head all the time. How bad do you want it? He would say that about everything. And that is what it comes down to. But if you don't have multiple stores, you can benchmark technician against technician, advisor against advisor. And we know it's like with anything. How come this advisor can do it and this one can't? And let's not just berate them because they're not. Let's find out how to elevate them to the level of the others. So we make sure we're providing the inspection and doing the service that we say we're going to do.
Absolutely. No, we kind of touched on this point a little bit already, but there's the case for a mitigated DVI, and that's really the key thing that we were discussing earlier, the flat repair situation, the change in plans. Are those process exceptions, or is this a sub process specifically? And I think that the answer is pretty clear that these are sub processes that we're actually moving through. You can't create them for every conceivable thing that happens in a shop environment, but the common ones you absolutely should. The common ones you do. Like Darren's saying too, inside of those reports, you're going to be able to identify those. And I feel like that these are the common ones that come into it. So there's some of the issues there. There's minimum criteria too. And Darren, I do want to ask your minimum criteria again. You mentioned it in passing earlier, the things that you must do no matter what you're doing, even those flat repairs.
Yeah. We were talking about these the other day. For one, especially in California, I think a lot of states have gone this way. You have to check by law and set the air pressure for the vehicle. So even if it was just in here last week and it's coming back and it's like, well, we just looked at this last week, they're back for their power steering flush, still got to check that air pressure because it's a tire. Just like you said, your son, one day he's driving, he's got to pull to the right. We got to check those air pressures and identify, wow, this left rear is a little bit low. Because it does two things. One, we can catch something that happened since last week, or we can catch that maybe we didn't actually check and set that air pressure when it was in last time because we were going too fast and we couldn't do it.
Right. And Nate says it's the right thing to do. And I agree. Even in the tire stores, I work with several where the expectation is it's in for tires and we pretty much only look at things in the wheel. Well, all right. Does that mean you're not going to do a DVI at all, or any inspection? You're still looking at things in that wheel well.
Yeah. I mean, you're there.
You really have a responsibility to do so. What if you missed something? Who are they going to blame later on?
That's us.
Yeah.
But those simple things, like the flat repair, when you're there, we wanted to take a quick measurement of the brake pad on that corner. Now, yes, we didn't see the right front, the left rear, or the right rear. I had to think about what I was saying there. But when you're there, you can at least take a peek and note that down. So our things were air pressure we had to do, and we would always do a light check. So it was a light bulb check, blinkers,
Bulbs.
brake
Yep.
lights, reverse lights, headlights, high beams, that type of stuff. Because
Buying 2 cars last night. One of them taillights wasn't working. Another one headlights weren't on. He couldn't tell bright city lights, but
yep.
terrible.
And those are those things that, did I disappear here?
No,
Oh,
you're
I'm
here.
sorry. Oh, I thought I lost you. My screen changed. Sorry. Those are those things that we just got to check every time, because they could have been good last week, but now the brake light's out and we want to make sure we catch that. And I think there was little things. We would do a windshield check, make sure there's no cracks. Windshield wipers, especially this time of year, you can look really quick. Are they torn? Are they good? You can always check those quick things, even when you're going to skip a full inspection.
Yeah, those are the simple things. And I would argue in our shop, as a transmission shop, all we would, it doesn't matter what the car is in for, they were always asking us for transmission fluid filter change. Grandpa was good at hounding that on the radio. We checked. As soon as we're under there, we're shaking tie rods down and all the other stuff that we can put our hands on, because most of the time they didn't need transmission fluid change. Man, they needed some suspension and steering.
You never know. Yep.
All the time. Customer doesn't know what they're asking for. Now, strategically, this is the main stuff that we want to talk about here. And the results of a busy shop environment, I consider 3 core strategies. The first one of them is one sheet to rule them all. And I've seen this work very well for a lot of organizations. What we mean is that these are categorized inspections. The category 1 section is always done no matter what. And it usually just has a few of the items like what Darren is describing in category 1. And the people are trained in the shop. They understand the context of the visit. Is it in for this? Is it in for that? Like Darren's sheet showed, how far do I go into this inspection form? And this is pretty useful, because as you go through a categorized sheet, you know that, all right, if I'm doing the full inspection, I do these categories. And then sometimes I've seen shops even have subcategories all set ready to go in case they do find something serious on some of the initial pieces. What I like about the one sheet strategy is it's very simple to keep inspections in order. What I don't like about it is that it makes reporting a little bit more difficult to know the types of scenarios. So like if that is the one inspection used for every single type of visit, when I'm looking at viewership reports later on in Autoflow, I don't get to know if they didn't view this full inspection or if that is just what level it is. I lose that context on the reporting side of things.
Yeah.
It's a useful strategy because you only have one sheet ever to assign and everyone becomes very familiar with it. And another negative to this one that I see is when you have new technicians that are perhaps also new to digital inspections, and you have a sheet that when it's fully opened has all kinds of line items, a mile-long list to do, they're immediate, like, you want me to do this much on every car? Say, oh, no. First they get the shock, then you pull it back, and it's like, no. We want to keep them much more simple up front, I feel like. And so, and I'll be curious to get your opinion on this, between especially these 2 things, Darren, the one sheet to rule them all versus an inspection sheet for key scenarios.
So let me ask you this. Do you mean when you're looking at the reporting, if it's the one sheet to rule them all, and let's say it's like at my shop, those waiter flat repairs, we're only going to look at whatever I had on there. Let's say it's 4 things.
Sure.
Does that make the reporting look like we are not doing a full complete VMI?
It often does when that's the thing is, oh, there's only a few items on this that the technician have, or only a couple of pictures. And yet on that same inspection form in the report, another technician did, like, he found 20 things and there's 30 pictures. And so it's difficult to see the consistency across multiple scenarios if you're using one sheet to rule them all.
Yeah.
So Dave is saying, as an auto repair shop, we try to do a complete inspection on all cars, and we train our customers. They will be with us in the shop for about 45 minutes if waiting. I like this. Most customers don't wait. Even better. Yeah, no, for sure.
Yes.
And you know what? And I want to speak to that for a quick second here, Dave, and we're going to come back to this multiple sheet strategy, because I think this is important. One of the first things that I was told by this man here, once he became my coach, it was just, Craig, you need to slow down. It's like, okay. Now, I think I should backtrack on this, because this conversation is for fast-paced, busy shops. I didn't start this conversation with, you must slow down, because I know you're not going to. But what Dave described is a really great form of expectation setting, because once you've done this, Yeah, you're busy doing the right thing, and
That's
that's Dave said it. That is spot on.
right.
Once that expectation is set, like, well, here's the other thing. I don't know about you, Dave, but for me, we didn't do flat repairs or a lot of quick lube visits in my shop, and we were terrible at attracting people for those maintenance type visits. So our car count was a lot lower, easier for us in a specialty environment, but that's one of these things. But here's where I see this, and I see this used widely across large brands across the country. And an inspection sheet for all scenarios. There's your default inspection that you want to do on every single car, your base level courtesy inspection, if you will. Then there's the DVI, an actual inspection sheet for clients that have been in recently for one, much shorter. All the usual things like what Darren's describing earlier for those minimum requirements. And it's quick. It's sometimes 5-6 clicks, you're done.
Yep.
And the same one is effectively used for the declined inspection. So between those two, the previous visit DVI and a declined inspection DVI, that declined inspection DVI is literally identical to that one, except it's titled for this specific scenario, which makes that a trackable scenario.
Reporting. Makes sense. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
And this is a great piece, and it's super short. And I always do get the question, hey, what happens if the customer declined the inspection and you find something wrong? Do you tell them? It's like, of course you do.
Yes. Oh yeah. We just happen to notice. It's not, hey, you declined the inspection and we still dug in and I want to tell you all this bad news. Hey, we happened to notice while we were putting the tire back that the CV axle boot was ripped or whatever it is. Yeah. That's a friendly offering.
Yes.
For safety. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is unconscionable to me that we wouldn't report and show them what we found. We would, in our shop before DVIs existed, we would be walking people into the back of the shop and we'd show them, did you know this tie rod's about ready to fall off? Kunk, 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 kunk. You wouldn't not show them that. You wouldn't just service their transmission fluid and say, good luck. I know you told me not to look at anything else.
Yeah.
But we found something else.
Yeah. And, you know, as you mentioned, we used to do that all the time too. We'd show you the ball joint movement, front end, tie rods, whatever it was. I loved having the videos. Once we had video capability that we could show the movement in the front end without having to walk them through the shop with the
dangerous shop, the loud
and I got to
shop.
tell you, I think insurance companies love digital inspections. They have to. Less customers walk into the shops. Oh, it's great.
Yeah, we have a whole product now, Darren,
insurance.
for insurance companies to do virtual inspections for warranty claims now. It's pretty great.
No, that's awesome. That's how it should be. That's great.
But then that fourth sheet is that when a DVI is not needed. And folks, this is a funny one. I've seen this scenario only a handful of times. What does it look like when it's not needed? Because I feel like that's really well served in the previous two examples that I just gave. When a client was in from a previous visit and they declined the inspection. I don't know what the not needed scenario actually even looks like, but this is the concept that I've seen floating around now, and it's a decent one. But is there ever a scenario where it's completely unnecessary, straight up unnecessary? Loose tire, maybe?
Oh, I'm sorry. Not that a repair was not needed, but that an inspection was not needed.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, man.
We're going to need another. I have to think between now and the next webinar if there's ever a not needed. But yeah, I think loose tire could be one, but still, you can take a tread depth measurement, take a picture and upload that to a DVI and send it to the customer just so they know, hey, just letting you know you got 30 seconds left. You can still do a DVI on a loose tire. Yeah. I know it sounds odd. I think you can find a way to do an inspection on everything, but
I think so too. I always thought, for me, the ideal, I don't know if you guys ever did this towards the end of your time there, Darren, but I always thought, hey, let's make a loose tire inspection. It's called loose tire inspection.
Yeah.
And that way, like, you document that, take a picture of that wheel in the condition it came in, click, done. Those guys can be easily trained to do that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you never know. I mean, take a picture of the grommet of the valve stem or the TPM. There's things that come up even during a loose flat repair or a loose tire that you may want to have some documentation on. So yeah.
Yeah. And Gerald said something here too. I'll answer this live. Not needed. Car was just in shop yesterday. Right. And that's, for me, that's still in that previous DVI category. Cause if they were in yesterday, that's the one I'm using in most cases. Cause that tells me that that's exactly the scenario, right in there. I can't think of the not needed cases. There is an off-topic question here too for you, Darren. I think it's worth noting. Simon's asking if you use the appointment scheduling feature. We have an online scheduler now. I don't recall that existed when you first started out.
We had a scheduling program in our point of sale that your program integrated with, which was awesome because we used your software to see all of our appointments. So as soon as we scheduled it, bam, Autoflow sent a text confirming the appointment with the customer and then would send one to them the day before. So there were scheduled reminders, but I don't think we had the scheduling set up.
Did you include pricing on those? Was another question. Like on jobs that the client could select while they were scheduling an online appointment?
Oh, no, it was not set up with the online part. I'm sorry. That was just if you called in or I was scheduling your appointment in the point of sale system.
No, didn't think so.
Didn't. And I don't think there was, I don't know if that was around.
I don't think it was when you guys started. It wasn't chief priority at that time anyways. Now, this is the third strategy that I wanted to talk about today, because this actually complements both of the other two. This isn't 1, 2, or 3. I would do 1 and 3 or 2 and 3, leaning toward the 2 and 3 because I like multiple sheets better for reporting. But batching the inspection tasks, guys, this is becoming an issue that I've seen multiple people teaching on this, lots of different terminology on it here. The bottom line is this: when you interrupt a technician from actual production to perform an inspection, it is not just the time that it takes to do the inspection that it takes this man. There's interruptions that take several minutes to recover from. And if he had to stop doing something, come and do this, that's a real problem. And believe it or not, most of the barriers I see to technicians, it's on this point. They're busy working on something. We pull them off because we have a waiter and we ask them to do the whole process with that. And then it's 30 minutes, 40 minutes later, they're finally back to the production task that we pulled them from. And they've got to reassess where they were, figure out the part of the process that they've lost all that inertia that they had on that project. And they're more prone to mistakes and failures too. And technicians, we feel this intimately when that occurs. The thing that I want to present is this idea of batching the tasks. And that can be a group of people that are responsible for it for today, and then another person's responsibility at another time. If these are all production technicians that don't like doing the inspection task, it's still something that has to be shared. Frankly, I enjoyed this part of the job, and I think it's the most important part of the job. But if you focus on that for this X period of time, like this is what I am responsible to do for this time period, that's going to remove that main barrier that says, like, this is the thing that's keeping me from doing what I am supposed to be doing. And that's where I see the number one issue come up with technicians giving pushback. It's like, this is something in the way of the something that you hired me to do. Common scenario. Darren, you must have ran across this multiple times.
Yeah. And we actually had, depending on the shop or the technicians or what was going on, you had to be able to adapt to it. But we used, because we were, I say we were heavy tires, but it was about 30 to 35% of our business. The rest, because we were so tire heavy for so many decades, we grew our repair side to where it became 70% of the business. But we still had a very well-staffed tire and lube department. And they knew as jobs would be brought out for the technicians, but they were already on another job, when they would finish this up, we had a service manager would let them know, hey, we need you to go do the inspection for Sean down at the end of the bay. Start racking that vehicle for him so he'd have his 2 bays going. And the general service technicians were just in the habit of being good at this. They were snapping the pictures, going through the inspections. And it also created a little bit of teamwork between, I'm using Sean as an example, but different technicians and the general service technicians to help each other here and there. So they could come through and at least get the inspection started until that technician might be at a stopping point, not as they're in the middle of torquing down the intake manifold, because we don't want to stop in the middle of that, forget where we are and snap a bolt off inside.
Valve body in our shop.
Yeah. So, having that teamwork back and forth. And again, that worked for us. We assessed that evolved over time, but it is something, if you are struggling with that, you have to look at it. And as owners or managers, you do have to get in on the ground level and observe what is going on and how can I adapt and make this work. It will also, recognizing these roadblocks and helping your team get past them, that will endear you to your crew. They will start to feel like, okay, they're in this with us. They really want us to help get this done. And you come up with solutions that the whole team is involved in. And that's how you really progress this forward. And then it's fun. Yeah. Then inspections become fun and you like looking at the reports and you feel good about the reports because you standardized it in a way that's realistic for your team and you feel like you can get wins And then when you do fall below, you address that and bring your standards back up to where they should be.
Yeah, spot on. The tire stores that I've worked with, that they're the ones that are having the problem more than even quick lube shops, certainly more than general service. And the biggest issue is that, well, we're here to sell tires is their principal idea. We're bang them in, bang them out quick. And the more you get done, the better it is. And that is the message that we've sent in a number of cases. You can do more than tires. There's a lot more you want to do more than tires. There's a lot more money to be made in the other things other than tires. And you're going to see it through this. So I love the concept of, I put owner's intent in there. I think I'm going to cite the Jocko Willink's book again with extreme ownership. There's commander's intent. So when you have the mission, everyone knows what that overarching goal of that mission really is. And when they understand, like, all right, the commander's intent on this objective, it gives you a lot of room to be able to operate in a way that you're still going to accomplish that goal, even though you have to get there in a different way. And the team needs to be able to communicate and be flexible enough to do these things on their own. I think that if it takes a lot of high-handed scrutiny over the team and so much of the accountability and benchmark elements, then we're already in a place where we're going to struggle. Each individual on that team, back to one of those key points at the very beginning here, I think this is one of the richest comments on here is, it wasn't this one, understanding the true purpose. That first question we had in the webinar, is this going to be a little about the why? It absolutely is. I think it would be a mistake to not do it. There's things in the product where those two of the strategies that we just discussed absolutely can be dealt with. I'd love to go into Autoflow and show you all the little places to manage those things, and that's an easy conversation to have. But this is where we typically are failing. If our team feels the pressure and sees the inspections as the thing that's keeping the client from getting out the door, we've got to address it.
Yep, for sure. And I think we got to get back to, the real reason of why we're here. Yes, we're a business. Yes, we're here to make money and be profitable and grow and expand and be efficient. I understand that. But we've all chosen to be in a service-based industry it's a daily grind. Our jobs, it's not easy. It's day after day. It's customer after customer, issue after issue. It's difficult, but we have to stop and think, what is the purpose of what we're doing? We're providing a service to customers. And ultimately, when they bring their car in, we hear it. Oh, it was just at McLea's. It was just here. It was just there. They looked at it. They didn't tell me it needed anything. So it must be all good. We're good for the cross-country road trip. So either we need to make sure we are inspecting it, or let them know, due to whatever the issue was, their time constraints, our time constraints, what we did look at, and that it still needs to be fully inspected before a road trip or anything like that. We got to make sure our customers are safe, because it really is, this is my dad's line, we are people helping people. That's ultimately what we're here to do. And however we have to go about that and communicate that, the importance is we communicate what we're doing for them. So it's very clear what we did, what we saw, and what we're letting them know about.
And Simon actually just had a really great comment here too. You see that in chat, that we see a lot of technicians paralyzed by having to CYA, cover their own butt, on every inspection. And that is interesting because, instead of seeing it as the valuable tool that it is. Now, I think that's another interesting thing too on this, Simon. That's a common perception that I noticed from frustrated technicians, that the customer's out to get them versus the other way around. You see that difference? If we flip that script and take the responsibility the other direction. So here it is. Quote in this book, Miller's Bolt: if you want to improve the relationships in your life, you must take responsibility by altering your perceptions, not on point to that exactly, but altering your perceptions.
You found that quick.
Yeah. Books stacked, man. I work for a reader who's a leader, and leaders are readers. So Chris is good about keeping us into books.
Oh, no, I mean, you found that quote fast. You must have that earmarked.
I just had it came up in another conversation today, but it's perceptions. When we look at someone else and we're perceiving that threat from the client, and this is a big issue in busy shops, you feel it. They're waiting in that lobby. You feel the pressure, and your perception might not be theirs. Maybe they're thinking, gosh, I hope they do a good job and find everything on my car. Boy, I hope they're doing a nice job. I've had more cases where it is missed items that technicians are letting go than anything else.
Yeah.
And the number one fear of clients is usually the inverse of that. We talk about that a lot. The number one fear of clients is that we're going to sell them things they don't need. Shouldn't be. Should not be that fear.
Especially when you have all these pictures and this data and these videos and you're so open about it. You're just sharing information with them.
Yep. Nope. This is a key why on this, but no, back to that point though, that person, your responsibility is to that individual, not to protect yourself from that individual, but to help them make good decisions on their vehicle. And if every technician adopts that attitude going into the inspection, it stops being a CYA thing. It stops being something that's in the way. It becomes the most important thing of what we do. And I think that is the core solution. And if we can't do that responsibility because we are too busy, then I'll invoke Bob Greenwood and say, hey, maybe we do need to slow down. Or if there's that much opportunity and our guys can't get it all done, we need to open up our opportunity to people and certainly hire. And I know a lot of you are trying to hire.
Yeah.
That's a whole separate topic.
Yep.
Darren, any closing remarks on this topic? Anything else you want to share or stories that you wanted to interject?
No, I mean, I do like just what we were talking about, the responsibility we have to a customer. What changed me years, and this is decades ago, years and years ago, when I was a service advisor. I remember a customer of mine coming in and saying, hey, my mother's going to come in for an oil change. Can you take care of her? Let me know what it needs. If there's anything that it needs safety-wise, you let me know. We'll take care of it. I said, no problem. I got you. I'll take care of it. Well, guess what I did? I was too busy doing whatever I was doing. I was too busy. And I didn't take the time. We didn't have digital inspection time, but I did not take the time when I was cashing her out to flip over and look at the inspection because the car kind of looked good to me.
Sure.
And I missed that her battery cables were corroded and the battery needed to be replaced. So I didn't tell them. My technician did everything he was supposed to do, but I didn't share that info. So when that customer came back in and pulled me outside and showed me the battery and let me know how I stranded his mother in the parking lot, who was probably 80 years old, 9 o'clock at night. This is a big guy and he's got tears in his eyes and his lip is quivering. It changed me to where I knew I cannot let a car go out of here without reviewing the inspection results or letting them know what we did and did not inspect so that they're very clear. So that I'm not saying, yeah, you're good. And then a week later, you're not good. Because I will never do that to anybody again. So I get a little bit of goosebumps as I share that story because I remember the feeling there and it did change me. And it showed me how important it is and how the customers rely on us to really have their backs and communicate with them well. So I encourage everybody, look at your organization and look at what is realistic for your team with the goal of ultimately serving your customers as best you can. And if you do that, you won't lose. You got it.
That's right. That's powerful. That's a good story, Darren. No, take it from Darren. I don't always have guests that still have dark colored hair or hair at all. So just the fact that it hasn't gone completely ghost white and fallen out, I think that's worth listening to him here. So he must have been doing something right. Yeah.
I had a lot of fun along the way. How about that? I did.
We always have a good time. So no, Darren McLea, I can't recommend a conversation with him enough. He's one of our good friends. He knows the Autoflow program as well. And for you guys that are heavy into tires, that have any struggle at all with the inspection process, obviously reach out to us, but Darren's a great resource as well. You see on the screen, that is exactly how they can get a hold of you, correct, Darren? And you're probably working through Christmas Day as well. And
well, I like to take a little time, build a basketball hoop here and there, something like that. But yes, I still love this industry and I love working with owners that want to see their business improve.
Nice. No, thanks so much, folks. I appreciate you joining us today. If you have questions on this topic, do not hesitate to reach out. So we enter the holiday week here. I wish you a very, very happy holiday season, and we will see you more next year. Awesome. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody. See you, Craig.
Bye-bye.